So as I said, there are a few new faces here, folks that I have not seen before. So that means I'm going to start from the very beginning before I even get into the conversation about relationships, because there are a few very important things that we need to keep in mind as we engage in this particular type of conversation. And those of you who have sat with me before, you have an essence of where that goes. So, but the general pitch, the thing I like to share with people is, all things in this universe are love given form to serve a purpose. We ourselves are love given form to serve a purpose, and our purpose is to be love. It is to move through this world with love and kindness, generosity, gratitude, and grace, and to use forgiveness as the mechanism by which we embrace one another. Because at the end of the day, we all arise from a singular seed of conscious awareness. We are all one as consciousness, energy, and matter. It is the confusion of the conditioned mind that prevents us from experiencing this fundamental reality for ourselves. When we are born into this world as babies, we are born with a clean slate, a clear mind. It is the first time that a parent says to us, "This is your foot, this is your nose, this is a bowl, this is a kite. This is right and this is wrong." That is the moment at which our conditioning begins. It continues with family and friends, with school and work, with television and media. Every social interaction that we engage in over the course of our lives adds another layer of conditioning. Eventually, all of these layers of conditioning give rise to the egoic manifestation of an I am that is not. We begin to believe that we are someone who is supposed to be doing something. And in this, we find ourselves lost. So that's the beginning. So welcome.
We absorbed that all at once.
There's a brief story that came up a couple of times over the course of the last week. And because it came up more than once, I think I should share it. Picture yourself on a little boat on a foggy body of water. And you're moving along on your little boat. You've got your little oar, whatever the case may be. And suddenly you bump into something, or something bumps into you. And it's another boat. And you just look over at the boat and you're like, "Oh my goodness, can't you watch where you're going? Aren't you paying attention? What's your problem?" And we get caught in this place where we start yelling angrily at the other boat driver. But then as the fog clears, we begin to recognize that the boat is empty. And if we look closely and we understand who and what we truly are, our boat is empty too. And yet, there's yelling and screaming and all of this other associated nonsense that's going on in this interaction. It's that egoic sense of self from which we're operating, the sense of the I am that is not, that has basically grabbed hold of sense perception and said, "This is me. This is my I'm the one seeing. I'm the one speaking. I'm the one listening." The I that thinks it owns all of those things doesn't really exist. There's only speaking occurring. There's only seeing happening. These are all experiences unfolding within this thing we call reality. Now, many of us find ourselves in all different kinds of suffering and difficulty. And what I love to explain to people, and many of us know the weight of this to be true, but our suffering is best measured as the distance between the way things are and the way that we want them to be. And it's when we're busy trying to shape the world in the direction of our wants and our desires that we find ourselves struggling against the truth of what is. Now, when it comes to relationships, there are a few different angles that we can approach this subject from. And as we begin to do so, last week we got together and we talked about what is the nature of God, right? And the underlying message there was God is a concept, born of whatever conditioning you've been subjected to. That there is indeed a loving, intelligent awareness moving all things in the direction of its own purpose. But that it is beyond any conceptual notion that we can use our intellect or our minds to try to understand. The more you try to understand it, the more lost you likely are. When you surrender to the mystery of what that is that's moving all things, to allow yourself to just be a part of that movement, to recognize that you yourself are much like a flute being played by the lips of God. Whatever that infinite intelligent awareness is. We talked a lot about the Tao. So anyway, so much like God is a concept, love is a concept. Love is a concept. There are many different definitions. I love this donut versus I love my children is a completely different thing. For most of us, though, our concept of love is something that's born out of desire. It has a possessive quality to it. What we're really seeing in others is not so much what the essence of love is, because that is something that is only really truly understand when you are one with your own essence of being, when you're one and at rest and fully present within yourself. We'll get into that. But this desirous and possessive quality is much more something about what can you do for me? I love you because this is what you have to offer me. Here's what you have to give me. This is what I can get out of it. And so, when we engage in a relationship with someone, we're trying to fill an emptiness. There's a longing for connection, a longing for validation. And often I talk about how most of us, we're not really living life fully. We're not really fully engaged in the experience of life. We're busy trying to live our lives vicariously through the approval of others. You and Joe are walking down the street, and you look down and you see a flower, and you're like, this is a beautiful flower. Look, Joe, isn't it a beautiful flower? And Joe goes, eh. And you go, oh my goodness, Joe, but did I get it wrong? I mean, I thought it was beautiful. Joe doesn't think it's beautiful. Obviously, if Joe doesn't think it's beautiful, there must be something wrong with me. We're busy looking for that external source of approval and validation. This is a part of the conditioning that gave rise to the egoic manifestation. When we're small children, when we're out there engaging in the world and we're busy trying to figure out who we are, there are all these people around us going, here's who you are. And I was listening to a teacher a couple of days ago who was talking about this as there's this poison that is injected into our youthful state, this poison of external validation, external praise. And so we live our lives vicariously through the approval of others. And there's this longing, there's this desire within ourselves to be whole and complete and full. But we're busy trying to fill that emptiness with things that are out there. And there is nothing out there that can fill that emptiness. Why? Because all of that's empty too. The whole thing is empty. If you reach into that place where you understand experientially at the depth of your being that there's only really one of us here, there's only a singular consciousness which animates all things, and that you, as a manifestation of form, are empty of self. What you experience as yourself is nothing more than a conceptual notion born of thought. Thoughts come and thoughts go, and when you're attached and identified to the movement of thought, to those thoughts themselves, that's where the I am that is not is born. So if you know this is empty of any real conceptual self, it's really, there is the presence of being, expressed through the manifestation of form. But that which is being expressed is formless. That which is being expressed is beyond our ability to understand. It goes back into that conversation about what is God. And so if you know experientially this is empty of self, then so is that. One of the interesting things about this notion of relationship is if you still think you're a person, and that there are people, and that the world is populated with people, you're still missing something. It's all coming from the same place. It's all arising, happening, and falling away. Everything. Everything. Now this is the position, kind of from the position of the absolute, from understanding that when we are really asking the question about what is relationship, the first thing you have to understand is how to fill the emptiness. It isn't with anything out there. That emptiness can only be filled when the concept of self falls away. And the one that thinks it's empty understands that it is an illusory emptiness. I wrote something this week that was saying something along the lines of, there's a point at the journey at which we realize that the one that we're trying to get free, the one trying to get free is the one we're trying to get free of. That conceptual self, the thing in thought that goes, well, I think this is what awakening is. I think this is what enlightenment is. I think this is what transcendence is. I think this is what this whole thing is supposed to be about. Well, that's all the thinking mind. And if you're thinking about it, it's not real. And so what you're chasing is an illusion. Now, the most wonderful thing, we'll get to this a little bit as well, all things are always exactly as they should be. This is one of the most fundamental aspects of reality. All things are always exactly as they should be. You're always exactly where you should be, doing exactly what you need to be doing. Always. Whether you're conscious or unconscious is entirely irrelevant. Consciousness is just a position from which to view what is. So is unconsciousness. You just don't know it. And those of us who are busy trying to chase the phantom of something more than what is, we're snipe hunting, right? And of course, there are many spiritual teachers and psychologists and sociologists and all kinds of people out there in the world who would be more than happy to give you whatever answer you want, for however much you're willing to pay for it. But the truth is you already have everything you need. You already have. You are the totality of existence being expressed through form. You need for nothing. You need for nothing. The idea that you need something more is part of the illusory self. It's part of the illusion. All right, so let's bring it back into relationship a little bit more from a couple of different perspectives. A couple of other perspectives. We're trying to find complete. What was the word you used? What was it? What was it you said the other day?
Make me feel.
Make me feel. We were having this conversation, and I was talking about what should I call tonight's thing. And Camille said, "Call it Make Me Feel." Because it's true, right? What we end up looking for is someone who can make us feel accepted, loved, appreciated, understood, acknowledged. It's what we're looking for. It's what we want. That's the ideal relationship. It's perfect if we get everything we want. Of course, we show up to this relationship. We are the best version of ourselves for that first date. Maybe the second one, maybe the third one, maybe for the first month, maybe for the first 3 months, maybe for the first year. We're the best version of ourselves. We take the version of I that we want the other person to see, and we package it up as nicely as we can, and we say, "Hi, this is who I am." And it's like, At a certain point, the training wheels fall off and the whole thing goes to heaven. But we're busy looking for somebody to complete us. And so what happens? If you don't complete me, if I'm putting all my eggs in your basket and I'm saying your job is to complete me, and then you don't, because who you were when we first got together was made up, and who I was when we first got together was made up, and now we're starting to figure out who we are together, and no one can complete you. No one. You're just asking for trouble. You are inviting failure. You are getting exactly what you deserve.
None of us know what you're talking about.
We all know exactly what it is, right? When we have this understanding of ego, right? Ego comes not in just one flavor. Ego isn't just how you view yourself. It isn't your own self-concept. When I talk about some of these things, in kind of different categories, I talk about we have to let go of the conceptual self and the conceptual world. When we have that egoic concept of self, it comes not only in that place where, it's here's the I am and I'm running across my own mind and woohoo, look at me. But it's also, we assign an ego to everyone that we're engaging with. I am assigning to you all of the qualities that I want you to have, that I think you should have. I'm basically writing a book about you in my own mind. And you're perfect. No, come on in. You're perfect. Me too, I'm perfect too. Now let's bring our made-up perfections together and see how that works. Now again, I want to take this, this understanding of how relationships come and how they go and how they fail and how we're failing each other. We're failing each other. In our relationship models as we experience them in this particular culture today, we are doomed to fail at relationships. If we enter into them this way. At the same time that I'm saying that, I am also saying that all things are always exactly as they should be. Now, people have this lovely notion of manifesting and, you vibrate at a certain frequency and you get stuff. And that's a bunch of nonsense. When that fails you and you realize that's nonsense, you'll be a lot better off. But that is the way things are. I try to explain that God doesn't give us what we want. The universe gives us what we need. And if you're busy chasing wants and desires, you are not going to. Even if you get what you want, then you have to hold on to it. And what's next? I got the job, now I want the car, now I want the house, now I want the woman, now I want the kids. Well, now I need a bigger house, and where does it end? Manifest until your little heart is content, and then when death comes to find you, manifest more life. If the egoic concept of self is no longer present and you realize the truth of who and what you are, death has no bite. You can't manifest your way out of that. So all things are always as they should be. And one of the things when I was at the gym this morning, I had this lovely little story come up. We'll see how it plays out. But consumed by I want, he fell to his knees and demanded of God, give me what I need. I want a woman. And God smiled and said, I will give you exactly what you need. You need to be broken of I want. So here's a woman to help you with that. And so you have that experience. You're getting exactly what you need. All things are always as they should be. That's what you're being given. And so you go through that experience. And then it doesn't quite work out, and you find yourself back on your knees. And there's another conversation. Well, that didn't work out. I want. And God goes, all right. Now, you're given a different I want because you've seen, right? You've seen from that particular relationship all the things that went wrong. Here's what I like, here's what I don't like, here's what I want, here's what I don't want. You've learned from the experience of that relationship, for good or ill, it doesn't matter. Something came from the experience of it, something beautiful. There's no such thing as failure. There are no errors in the game. Everything is perfect. Everything is happening with absolute perfection. That's a whole different conversation, but it is. And so, on your knees, I need. Here's another one. Now we're going to break you from this angle. And from this one, and from this one, and from this one, until you're on your knees going, I don't want anything anymore. Stop the madness. I want off this wheel of samsara, as is called within the Buddhist tradition. Most of what we're finding within ourselves as we're engaging in all these different types of relationships is that we are dancing with fear and desire. Fear and desire. That these things are being shown to us. What am I fearful of? What am I desirous of? What is my I want? How is it that I'm trying to fill the emptiness with what's out there, which is also empty? How am I caught in this? Eventually, when you give up, when you surrender, when you say, no more, I've had enough, then, and only then, will you be given what you're ready for. And that is that place where there's no longer a desirous or possessive quality. There's no longer an I want that has to be fulfilled. There's no longer something that says, what is it? Make me feel. That isn't there anymore. Now, the relationship is only one way in which you are being broken. Every experience that occurs is meant to teach us something about who and what we are, to expose us in one way or another to the myth of self, to the conceit of I. Eventually, we get it. In whatever way we're meant to. Now again, going back to everything is always exactly as it should be, and whether you're conscious or unconscious is entirely irrelevant, understanding that everything is interconnected and everything is happening within the same sea of conscious awareness that exists just beneath our doubting minds. And that the ripple of the unconscious being here behaving in this way affects the conscious being of behaving this way over here. And it's all just movement. It's a harmony of motion. It's all a harmony of motion. But within the harmony, many of us have, with some degree of sincerity or another, found ourselves saying, the rest of this stuff isn't working for me. I don't know why. But I know that I've tried this, and I've tried this, and I've tried this. I'm looking for freedom. I'm looking for peace. I'm looking for joy. However it presents itself for us, we feel that that longing isn't something that can be satisfied out there, and we start to look inward. We start to open our consciousness to the potential that maybe it's me. Maybe it's not the world out there that's the problem. Maybe if I want something out there to change, I have to reach in here and change it here first. And so we find ourselves in these kinds of settings, having these kinds of dialogues. So relationship is only part of the system. Relationships happen within the system of experience, within the system of being. Again, there is a loving, intelligent awareness moving all things in the direction of its own purpose. We don't necessarily even need to understand what that purpose is. Whatever story we tell ourselves is just going to be a story. If we're going to tell ourselves any story at all, let's tell ourselves a love story. Why not? It's all love given form to serve a purpose. And we, with our confused and conditioned minds, are busy ascribing and assigning purpose to everything. So let's go ahead and tell ourselves whatever story we want. But to recognize that that is happening, it is happening, and that it's all happening with absolute perfection and absolute beauty, and whatever we find ourselves standing in at any time is a part of the perfection. Whether it's surrounded or encompassed by fear and doubt and uncertainty, whether it's approached with absolute confidence and complete understanding, it doesn't matter. Relationships are only one part of the whole system, one of the mechanisms by which you are being broken of I want. You're being exposed, you're being shown where your fears are and where your desires are. And what you're being asked to do in each and every time that you're exposed to this reality, you're being asked to let go of fear and desire. You're being asked to explore the nature of the one who is in fear and who is in desire. Because again, if you understand that this is empty of a conceptual self, there is the presence of being, but that which is in thought is illusory, has no reality of its own. It has no weight other than the weight that we give it. And you can work in a place or move from a place of silence and stillness and quiet, the spaciousness beyond the mind, where you recognize that the consciousness that animates your consciousness, the consciousness that from which your own localized experience of consciousness arises, is ageless, infinite, eternal. This is again what we talked about last week. Right? We also talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I talked about dying the undying death. And how when the ego falls away, we experience all these things. When the conceptual self falls away, that's the nature of awakening. To get that initial exposure, whoa, I'm not who I thought I was, and this isn't what I thought it was either. Now we get back on the merry-go-round, we get back on the roller coaster ride after our awakening, because there's still more work to do. But that's the nature of awakening. So relationship. From a few different angles, right? It's a question of what angle are we looking at the question of relationship from? Are you approaching the question from the position of the person, the conceptual self, who has wants and needs and desires, who thinks, I'm this, you're that, and this is what it should be? Or are you approaching it from the position of the absolute, where you recognize it's all just a harmony of motion, and wherever I find myself within the harmony it's where I'm supposed to be. Now, I'm not worried about whether I am in a relationship or I'm not in a relationship. All I'm doing is being present in whatever situation I find myself in. I'm not trying to reach for something. I'm not saying maybe tomorrow. I'm also not reaching into all of my yesterdays, right? Into that web of yesterdays where all the fears really come from. Uh-oh, I was wounded this way, I was hurt this way, this person did this thing to me, this person did that thing to me, and our web of yesterdays clouds the present moment, and we project it into the future, and that, right there, if we could let go of yesterday, if we could be fresh and new and spontaneous here, now, in this moment, from one beautiful unfolding moment into the next, we would be completely free. Completely free to be who we are here, now, in this moment. Always. So the relationship with self, first of all, are we living vicariously through others? Have we learned to love ourselves enough to let go of ourselves? Most of us don't truly love ourselves. We are clinging to our concept of self. And until we understand that it is by treating ourselves with love and kindness in the mind, the body, and wherever else we find ourselves, both internally and externally, moving all things in the direction of love and kindness to the best of our ability, within ourselves, for those around us, and for the earth. In that order. Love and kindness for yourself. Until you get to that place where you recognize, there's something else at work here. And this is part of one of the things I talk about. Generally, the 5 things that I really focus on with people. Learn to love and trust yourself and honor your own journey. Practice mindfulness and meditation. Learn to face and let go of your pain. Pay attention to synchronicity and be wary of your traps. These 5 things, they are a very powerful addition to whatever else you may be practicing. And there's a talk on every single one of those in this kind of format on the website, Awakening into Life. So if you hear something there and you say, it's all freely available. It's not hidden away. You don't even have to give an email. It's all just there. The only way to fill that emptiness is to reach inside. To go back into that place that I was talking about towards the end of the meditation. To find within ourselves what we truly are. To see it for ourselves. I had somebody the other day on Facebook say, can you prove enlightenment? And I'm just laughing. I'm like, well, it's what all enlightened beings have been trying to do for thousands of years. I'm going to have to say no. It's experiential. It's the only way you can reach into it. It's experiential. And the problem is we have so many different definitions of what does that mean. And I say, we're moving into and beyond enlightenment because enlightenment's a concept. It's a trap. Everything's a trap. Everything is a method and a trap that is meant to fail you into yourself. It includes relationships. Relationships are a trap. They're a method. They're meant to move you deeper into yourself, to expose all of the places in which you have work. Nobody can push your buttons like the person you live with. We all know that to be true. There was another thing I saw. Somebody had posted a cartoon, which I can certainly equate with. But it was this Buddhist monk, and they were saying, you only have one last test before we authorize you for enlightenment. Silly, but. And the final test was you have to go home and have Thanksgiving meal with your family. You have to survive that. So there are other kinds of relationships that we have too, right? But I don't necessarily think that I need to go any deeper into any of that, because the nature of relationship, regardless of who's on the other side of it, it's all self. It's all coming from the same place, moving in the same way. And if you look into the eyes of another being and you see someone separate from you, you're already in trouble. To see yourself, to see the essence of your own nature reflected in the eyes of another, to see the beloved in the eyes of all beings, to recognize that that which animates you, that from which you arise, within which you occur, and to which you will return without ever having gone anywhere, is the same thing moving them. It's the same thing. Can you connect with the essence of your oneness? Not this one, but this one. And so with that said, we'll just open it up for dialogue, because there's a lot there and a lot of opportunity to discuss various things. Of course, if people have specific relationship issues, we can get into some of those as well. That's really kind of the heart of what I wanted to speak to tonight. To understand that we have to work within our own experience of being, to find our fulfillment, that sense of completeness within ourselves. And if we're not quite there yet, we are being given the lessons that we need to show us the way. So there we go. Comments, thoughts, ideas, questions, additions? If not, I'll just keep talking. Yes.
Thanks for doing this. It's crazy. I feel like everything you said I just needed to hear. I'm definitely where I'm supposed to be right now. I don't know if I'm, just right there, sorry. Yeah, anyways,
Whatever works for you.
Okay, I'm just gonna say what's on
There's
my
only
mind.
one of us here.
Okay, so oneness. It's just so crazy because it's like exactly what I've been going through. So like all of my friends are like getting married and having kids and like in relationships. I've been going to all these bachelorette parties and I'm going to a wedding and baby showers and everything. And I'm single. And I'm just like, I've just been comparing myself to everybody else and like really having this like pity party and like, I'm like, why don't I have a boyfriend or like a husband? Like, what's wrong with me? And I've been really kind of getting depressed about it, you know? And I have been kind of like seeking that outside validation, you know? And I don't know, it's just, I know it, like I'm aware of my thoughts and I'll be like, all right, but then it's the hardest thing I have controlling is my emotions. And especially when I'm in a relationship because I've never been good at being in relationships. Like I get super, you know, jealous and possessive if they're flirting with someone or whatever it is. Like I don't know how to like turn that button off. I don't know how to do it. I'd love to like work on that. I'd love to, you know, really control my emotions better. I guess meditation would be the best way. I don't really know, but you're so right in everything you said, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And no other person outside of me, or a baby, or a marriage, or whatever, is ever gonna like fix that, you know. But it's definitely like been on my mind a lot this past month, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of things that come up with that, right? One is that you know, you were talking about how the people around you are living the dream, right? And you know, so you're in a comparative narrative, right? You know, one of the things that we generally tend to, you know, I often say there are something akin to 7.3 billion people on this planet right now, and therefore there are 7.3 billion journeys. And if you try to take the journey of another, you will find yourself lost. Right? And so we cannot live in that place of comparison. We cannot look at the lives of other beings and say, why don't I have that? Why am I not that? Why do they have this? It's all really about being fully present in where we are and being in that place, and I'm going to talk about this next week, of loving what is within our own experience of being. Bringing the whole thing inward, When you really understand what this all is, and I was explaining this a little bit the other night, but you know, this is all just a movement. And the way I live, there's no, and this goes to a little bit of what you were saying as well about, you know, with the thought and, you know, how to control emotions and some of that. But it's very much, when the world is moving, all I see is movement. There are no labels, there are no stories. The mind isn't active, and it doesn't react. It doesn't react to what's out there. Things are noticed within the harmony. Things are noticed as notes within the harmony. But the mind doesn't grab them. It just observes. It doesn't react. Now, when there are situations closer to home, right, then things can become more reactive. Like I said before, you know, nobody can push your buttons like the people you live with. And the way I experience it is everything is this harmony of motion until something from the harmony steps out and demands my attention. Whether it's a person asking a question, whether it's somebody who's in my way on the road, whether it's a particular event, whether it's a particular family member, something steps out of the harmony and demands my attention. When something demands my attention, then there is engagement. Then there is reactivity. Only when there's something demanding my attention. Otherwise, it's all just happening. I don't have anything to do with anything that's happening out there. That's all just, it's the movement of things. It's the movement of things. And when we're living in that place where we're judging the movement of things, when we're busy telling ourselves stories about the movement of things, when we're busy trying to live everyone else's lives, who's living ours? Right? And so to just be fully engaged in our own lives and be fully present in our own experience of being, loving what is within our own journey. When something demands attention, then and only then does the whole process of, all right, now I need to. And that's done mindfully. done mindfully. All right, I'm engaging. Mind up, right? It's like, you're turning on the radar. It's like, okay, the mind is now engaged. I'm here in this place. I need to be paying attention. And so you work with mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. And then as you see thoughts come and thoughts go, you don't allow them to grab a hold of you. And if you do allow them to grab a hold of you, just know, I have work to do there. I have work to do there. Now, I have a couple of 7-year-old twins in my life, right? And nobody pushes my buttons like these 2 very young children. They are my greatest teachers, and I love them for all that they have to teach me. But when I find myself just at a loss, and here I am at this place of understanding, and yet still I will raise my voice because I'm just like, oh. And as I'm doing so, I'm watching. I have work to do there. I have work to do there. It's very much working to move all things in the direction of love and kindness to the best of our ability. And when we fall off our horse, we just get back on and continue riding forward. We don't look back or concern ourselves with what occurred. Because the deeper truth is that all things are exactly as they should be. And if there was the raising of a voice, or if there was an action taken while caught in an emotion, that too is part of the harmony. That too is part of the unfolding nature of reality. If you are the asshole or you're the good guy, it doesn't matter. You're just playing a role within the harmony. That's why we say all beings are already enlightened. It's just a question of how much of it you realize for yourself or not. Because if there's no self, and you're being moved, animated, shifted around from place to place, doing thing to thing, and you grab a hold of it and own it as part of the egoic identity, you grab it and try to own it as, well, I did this. Oh, that's a heavy weight. So just practicing mindfulness really helps us not just tune in to the illusory nature of thought and the illusory nature of self, but it also becomes a tool from which we can live life. That's one of the reasons why I share with people the heart breath. Because meditation as a technique is only useful to a certain degree, right? If you spend your time sitting on a cushion meditating and you have all these states of bliss and all these beautiful realizations, and then you get up from the cushion and you just, you're still angry at everybody, you're still impatient, that didn't necessarily help. Being able to take what we learn on the cushion into life and allow ourselves to be fully present is far more useful. And so breathing into the heart, it becomes a refuge. When we find ourselves in emotional states and we find ourselves caught in stories and all that, we just go, oh, look, I'm caught. And we breathe into the heart and we allow ourselves to find that ancient, ageless wisdom, to settle into who and what we truly are, and allow the mind to disengage. And then we can come back to whatever is in front of us, fresh and new. So those are a few of the things that come up for that. And it's tough, man, because it is very, very difficult, very, very difficult to both own what's happening and know that we're getting in our own way at the same time. It's very difficult to split the hair of, well, free will, or it's all predetermined. What am I responsible for? And the answer is you stand in the center and you say yes in both directions, and you just do your best to move all things in the direction of love and kindness. That's it. That's the whole game right there. Do your best to move all things in the direction of love and kindness, and if you mess it up somewhere along the lines, you just go, and this too. and you move on. That's pretty much it. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's some of the kind of stuff that comes up.
I just have one more quick question.
Yeah.
Like, so there's, it's kind of random, but this past month too was weird. Like, so one of my exes have been texting me.
Sure.
And like, you talked about engagement. There's like, it's a thought, but I've been thinking about it and I'm like, all right, so this would be like outside kind of validation.
Mhm.
Like when I see that text, so I don't answer.
Mhm.
But then I'm like, is that being like mean? Like, am I not being, do you know what I'm saying? Because
Sure.
you're talking about like letting go of the past and like staying in the present moment and like treating each moment as new and like, I'm just getting kind of confused and I'm like, oh my God, should I just, I don't know, like what are your thoughts about like, maybe like a situation like that?
Sure. I think the most important thing is to, when you find yourself in that situation, pay very close attention to what is the initial reaction. The initial reaction is that moment of guidance. That initial reaction to what is occurring is the thing that shows us where we need to do work. So if the initial reaction to something like that is, you know, oh, they're being mean, or if it's, oh, I wonder if I should respond, or, you know, all these kinds of things. It's just, what's the emotional content that comes forth in that initial moment? What's the most immediate thing? And then looking deeply at that, just bringing it into the center of your consciousness, bringing it into the center of your awareness, and looking deeply. And looking deeply from a few different directions, right? You know, what am I trying to work on here? What's the issue? Why do I feel that way? What part of my past is this tied to? You know, all that. There's a whole bunch of that kind of stuff. But even more basic and even more useful for many of us, depending on how far along the road we are and how much work we've already done, is asking the question, who? Where is the one that needs to respond? Where is the one who is reacting? Where is the one caught? Looking deeply at whether or not that one is real. Or is it just a thought, a passing thought? Or an emotional state that's arising in response to a thought? Yes, sir.
Okay, Brad, I get everything, all this, you know, I get it. I mean, all I can do is just give you a stream of thoughts of what's going on through my head, and then you pick it up like you always do, okay? Okay, so the purpose of relationships are to actually, you know, work out our wants, our desires, our attachments to those wants and desires, to eventually get to a place where it's like there are no wants and desires.
A better way to frame it, a more summarized way, is to say, relationship is here as a tool to help set you free.
Okay, so the whole point is to get to that place of where you are set free.
Mhm.
Okay, so therefore, that once you're set free, really, they're like the wants and desires are minimized.
There's, I think I mentioned this last week, but there's a wonderful poem by the 3rd century patriarch in Chinese Zen that says, "The great way is not difficult for one who has no preferences." Right? And that's the place we're being put in.
So what would be the point of our relationship when you are finally free and there are no further desires or wants? I mean, because see, you know that I live at the temple with the monks.
Yes.
Okay, now we provide an environment for them
Yes.
where they are kind of deprived of the ability to actually have to work out their wants and desires by not being exposed to triggers that will trigger those
Sure.
wants and desires. So okay, so they got food, they have their rope, they have their roof, and they have medication. Go do your thing. Okay, now I'm asked, hey, why don't you become a monk? You know, because they can see that I can really help and teach a lot.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm like, I like my attachments.
Mm-hmm.
I still like my worldly thing, but then those worldly things are there for the point of getting to what they're trying to work. Now, isn't that a step closer to actually being out here in the world and dealing with the crap? You know, if relation, you know, in Buddhism, it's like suffering
Mm-hmm.
is caused by those desires
Right.
and attachments, okay?
That's right.
And there's a way out of it.
That's right.
And the way out of it is to desire,
Mhm.
to actually work the noble, the path. Okay, so there's a desire. So that, being that that's a desire within itself, is going to cause you suffering within itself. Because you're still in the cycle of samsara, like you
That's
said. Okay, so at what point do you snap out?
When you are free, when you are truly free, and you recognize who and what you are, and what all of this really is, there is no longer anyone left to ask those questions. All you see from this place is what is. What you begin to recognize within your own experience is that all things are as they should be. Our work is never truly done. I mean, what we're really tapping into is infinity, right? The infinite expression of divine consciousness, of conscious awareness itself, right? And so there's no end. There's no end to the process of unfolding. It's just when we're free of the illusion, and we're in that place where you just, whatever's being handed to you, you say, and this too. You invite it all. You know that that loving, intelligent awareness, it knows far better than I do. I'm in a relationship, and I hold the whole thing in the spirit of tremendous gratitude, not necessarily for the relationship, that too, but for all that the relationship continues to teach me. Not about being free, but about what it means to be free. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Okay, so like what Gina was saying, okay? So you are in a relationship, and therefore you are awakened, and therefore
One would assume.
or assume, and one sees that everything is exactly how it's supposed to be.
Right.
It doesn't change the fact that there are certain things that are, because we are conditioned, and this is where we live, this is what we have, is that there are apparently obviously right or wrong, okay? Not everything can just be just right. Because I know from here, everything is just right, but it's just not right,
Sure.
okay? So I'm not going to, it's hard for me to say, it's like, well, you know, I have this level of enlightenment, and I understand that everything is exactly how it is. And so therefore, it's okay for you to go and shit all over me, because everything's exactly how it's supposed to be, okay? So therefore,
Right.
it's fine. It's
Right.
not fine.
Right.
Okay, so now I come to the realization, it's like, it's because I have these fears and these desires
That's
that I
right.
really give a shit about the fact that you are doing that to me.
Yeah.
So therefore, we're done.
Mhm.
I made a choice.
That's right.
Now I was ready to get into another relationship to work the same crap I was unable to work out here,
Maybe.
which is something that is wrong no matter what the situation,
Right.
whether it's right, everything's exactly how it's supposed to be, but it's wrong.
Right.
So, okay, so you keep pursuing this cycle until you come to the realization that it's like, okay, well, you know what? Even if it's happening or not happening, sometimes I'm not even gonna know, so how do I know? So what are we doing? I mean, spinning, bullshitting ourselves. It's
Yes.
like, you know, I saw this meme, you know, this Buddhist meme, and it says like, it's the Buddha, you know, and it's like, you know, the suffering is in the giving of the fucks. Pretty much, it's like, just don't give a fuck. And that's it. Okay? I mean, you know, it's like everything's just fine. Just,
If
so
that's the
anyway,
truth, and Polly
I-
is the freaking Buddha, man.
I see it from here, the whole game
Right.
is playing itself, but you know what? I am in the game.
Yes.
Now, to snap out of the game, I don't know how, like, you go, I've met a few that have had the awakening.
Mhm.
It's obvious that I'm not there because I'm here, okay? But I've had a level of understanding. Now, like you said, we've already all awakened, so I just haven't cleared this crap off yet to get there. I don't know, it's just like a massive whirlwind confusion that is going on. I mean, I get it, but relationships are my biggest.
Of course.
It's like nobody bothers me on the outside. I'm totally aware. That is the one point where my fears kick in. And that's where like insanity kind of kicks in, because you know, I get so in the wrong or the confusion that it's like, I'm not even being spiritual about it. I just don't want to get hurt.
So from the most practical perspective, right? From the most practical perspective, when we find ourselves in those places, the question that we need to ask ourselves very deeply and with radical self-honesty is, am I loving myself by exposing myself to this particular difficulty? Asking ourselves, when we find ourselves standing in particular difficulties, what would someone who loved themselves do? If I love myself, why am I punishing myself in this way? And that has to be counterbalanced with, is it me caught in a place where I'm just not worthy of love? That sense of unworthiness is keeping me caught, walking down a long, dark road. Or am I in a situation where everything really does have a reciprocal, dynamic quality to it? Is there something in the relationship for me that is allowing me to become free or to experience freedom in a deeper and deeper way? And only you can answer those questions for yourself. Each and every one of us. We have to ask these kinds of questions within our own experience of being and rely on our own inner wisdom to help guide us in the direction of making a decision, knowing the whole while that you really can't go wrong either way. An example would be, I've had people who tell me, I'm with this man, he has no job, he has no home, he has no money, and he beats me every day. He lives with me, he eats my food, he beats my children. There's nothing reciprocal in that scenario. Nothing reciprocal. There's no redeeming quality whatsoever. A person choosing to subject themselves to that punishment has very deep things that they need to work out. Very, very deep, a very deep brokenness that needs very serious and very real attention at a certain level. But a person who is in a situation where, this person, if I look at what's important to me, if I look at what's really important to me, if this is my checklist, these 5 things are the things that are most important to me, and this person has 4 of them, but not the 5th, and I say, well, you're not perfect, so out you go, that may not be the best decision. We may we may find ourselves being placed in a situation where we need to accept that 5th need isn't going to be met for whatever reason. So this is an example, right? These are a couple of different examples of saying, we have to look at what is it that we're getting out of the relationship that we're in. And is it something that is showing us that we're either misunderstanding the nature of our own love, or we aren't understanding how to receive love fully? Because a lot of people find themselves in those kinds of scenarios. And what happens in those kinds of scenarios is we stay in them for all the wrong reasons. There's a big difference between being alone and being lonely. And most of us will stay in these situations because we're afraid of being lonely. That's the biggest trap. So we have to look very deeply. If we're in a situation where there is no redeeming quality, no reciprocal quality to the dynamic of that relationship, why am I here? Why am I staying in this place when I know that if I truly loved myself, this isn't where I would want to be? Am I worthy of more? Am I deserving of more? Is there more out there for me? And yes, you may find yourself in another relationship with another kind of person working out the exact same shit. But the reality also could be that by leaving behind the thing that did not serve you, you did work out your shit. Being able to make that choice is the purpose of the whole adventure. And the fact that you loved yourself enough to leave it behind is the lesson you were meant to learn. So that's what comes up for that. I mean, Camille and I, we have lots of very interesting dynamics within our relationship, but at the same time, you know, there is such beauty in the dynamic. Such beauty. That there's no question the nature of the relationship or the purpose that it serves. It just is. It's the isness of the relationship that is fulfilling and satisfying and beautiful. And it doesn't matter whether we're on a roller coaster or not. It's the recognition that we are one, expressed as two, coming together in order to explore the one. And that the whole play of emotional content and difficulty is just so that we can both peel away more layers. All right. So that's, what else? What else? We've still got like another half hour before I'm letting anybody go, so.
I'm kind of getting out of a relationship now because it was like realizing that no matter what I did was not the right thing, was not going to be helpful in life.
Yes.
And,
Right.
and there's this sense of relief, but also more of a sense of love about it. That I'm not being mean, nor is he being mean. And we have learned from each other, but this is, there's a piece about it. And when you were talking, I realized that some of that is for myself accepting that some things don't work out, you know, and that it does get down to what is valuable to me and is the price worth paying?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And is it worth the price? And if I'm going to hurt now, I'll say that I don't want that pain now, that feeling like I can't do anything. And it's like hitting where I recognize I can't do anything makes it easier in a sense. And yeah, I'm following it, but it all goes, you know, but learning a little more about myself, that's how I work. And I noticed in the meditation that about going, when it said to go into your heart space, I go, and it's because of that preconceived thing of what heart space is meant. So I use going into my little motor. The air is the petrol, and the motor, the heart's the motor. And I was okay going there, and then it was like my big heart. It was like I went, oh, but it had to be from the motor angle, not the idea of just the heart space, which is the same thing. It's the heartbeat, the big heartbeat. And it's like, it amazes me sometimes with the little things that I personally have to do to get around all of those things that I learned over the years that just don't work or make sense. And that's where my brain goes first. If I figure out a way to get around that, I can get a little bit different view of things.
Yes.
That's it.
And something you brought up, it brings something up that, you know, is really kind of important to this conversation. And I had alluded to it earlier, and I said I'd talk about it, and I haven't. Right? The true nature of love. The essence of what love really is. Love, true love, is grounded in acceptance. In acceptance. It isn't... You can sit here and you can say, I don't like this, I don't like that, I want you to be this way, I want you to be that way. And all you're doing is taking the other person and putting them in a box. You're cramming them into a box. You're saying, unless you behave this way, I'm sorry, but you're probably not going to get all that you want out of this thing. It might be the amount of nookie you desire. It might be the attitude. I may not do the laundry. But whatever it is, unless you behave this way. Right? And then that backfires, right? Because we're trying to control and manipulate another being to serve our needs, which doesn't work. What happens is we create a whole field of resentment within the other being. Because the reality is, if you understand, you are the totality of all that is expressed in form. You're already struggling against the idea, shit, why am I in this form? This is so limiting. All right, I guess I have to play the game. Right? That's the surrender. But if then you're in a relationship where the other person's going, just being in form isn't good enough. I also want you to be this version in form. Now you're being, you know, you're like one of those little dolls, the little Russian tea dolls, being crammed in another one, and another one, and another one, over and over and over again. At what point do you go, enough? True love is acceptance. True love is grounded in acceptance. True love says, I understand that in this moment, this is where you are. It doesn't put people in a box. It recognizes that all thought, all emotion, all things, they're all temporary, ephemeral, ever-shifting, ever-changing. And if you say, well, here's who you were yesterday, so here's who I expect you to be today, and if you don't behave according to my expectations, that's all very problematic. It's being able to look at the person you're with and say, this is who you are now. And an hour later, this is who you are now. And an hour later, this is who you are now. Never confining them to your idea of who they should be. Not based on past experience, not based on personal preferences or desires, not based on any of that nonsense. Just fully embracing and accepting the person where they are now, from one moment to the next. Because the people in our lives, every single one of us knows, there's no question. Are you the same person you were a week ago? Or have over the course of the week, you experienced a number of things that may have said, maybe this tweak over here might be a good idea. Or maybe I see things a little more clearly today here. And that influences how you interact with others. So if you have a situation where, you know, maybe a week ago you were having a really hard time and you had all this stuff going on and you were in this particular state, and then you wake up and you go, all right, I'm in a good mood today, and this is going to be a great day, and the person you're with looks at you and goes, are you going to be a shit again today? That doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to look at the person you're with and say, how are you today? What's today like for you? What's your experience in this moment? How can I be of service? And also at the very same time, loving each other enough to sometimes say no. Loving yourself enough to sometimes say no. Because if we are in a place where we're busy trying to satisfy the wants and needs of the other person, and we're doing so in a way where we completely sacrifice absolutely every aspect of ourselves into that other person's endless wants, then what's left for you? And is that loving? Sometimes the greatest way in which we can demonstrate love for ourselves and love for others is in saying no. No. But I want you to do this one thing. It's just a small thing. Maybe to you. But I'm going to say no. And true love says, okay, and lets it go. True love doesn't make an issue out of everything. True love doesn't demand anything from the other. True love is unconditional. Now, of course, this is a radical practice. That's why I said, I love that quote, right? The great way is not difficult for one who has no preferences. If you just are like, these 9, we look at the day and we say, okay, 10 things happened today, and of these 10 things, 9, I don't really care about. Do you want to watch this or do you want to watch this? It doesn't matter to me, whatever makes you happy. There's a lovely movie, The Princess Bride, right? And in the movie, The Princess Bride, Wesley, the young man, they go through this whole thing at the beginning where they say that he would always answer this woman, as you wish. As you wish. And every time he said, as you wish, it was his way of saying, I love you. Long before we had this conversation in our household, before any of us got engaged in this conversation, I've been saying, as you wish, as often as I can. And that is the practice. Say as you wish, as often as you can.
Have you ever been on the other end of saying as you wish all the time?
No, but that's what I'm saying. Say as you wish, as often as you can. And when you can't, love yourself enough to say no. And allow it to be okay. And if the other person can't deal with it, that's their problem, not yours. That's their work, not yours. When someone is told no, and they come at it from a reactionary point of view, and they start saying, why aren't you satisfying me? Is that your work? Especially if you let go of your preferences for 9 out of 10 things. And you say no to the one. And they go, why don't you love me? I'm sorry, I do. But no comes with the whole thing. Right? It's just a matter of what's important to you. Holding a space within yourself for others to be who they are without demanding anything of them. Now, if they still don't get you where you need to be, if you still find yourself struggling, if you're trying to hold that space and it's just, you just can't do it. You just can't hold that space for this person because of the way they are. You really want to, but you just can't. Then you can try other things. You can say, all right, well, maybe this need can be served over here, maybe it can be served over here. And then you keep trying to figure out how it works. And if it still doesn't, you eventually get to that place where you have to say, all right, maybe not this one. And then we get to that place where you have to say, at what point am I no longer loving myself enough to move in the direction of that which really serves me and really helps me get free and really offers me love. That unconditional love that each and every one of us is looking for. That unconditional love that can really only be found here. But once it is found here, the universe says to you, all right, here. Now that may or may not be part of your journey. But isn't it nice to think that once we figure it out, the universe responds by saying, now, you're going to have what you need. And maybe all you need is a dog. Maybe you need a partner. Maybe you need a goldfish. Maybe you need to be alone. But by the time you figure this out, it doesn't matter anymore. By the time you figure this out, there's no one left to say, why can't I have this? Why can't I have that? What about this? You just watch the whole play of wants and desires and you say, it's all in thought. It doesn't matter. This is what is. Here's where I am. This is what's in front of me. And I am going to be present for it all. All right, so that's a lot of stuff in response to your comment. Yes, well, like I said, I had alluded to earlier that I was going to speak to that point, and I hadn't gotten there yet. So.
I've been convinced for years that unconditional love on planet Earth does not exist. It's all love is conditional on planet Earth.
It is, but when we find ourselves sitting on the side of being the one who's holding the condition,
Yeah.
that's our work. When you find yourself standing in a place where I can't accept this, that's your work. You can't expect it of someone else, but if you see it in yourself, you can respond to that in yourself and say, this is my work, and you can do the work to create more spaciousness,
Yeah.
to create more spaciousness.
That it's coming, to get to that unconditional love part, you have to leave your attachment to Mother Earth and all that stuff going on out there. And that's where it comes from.
That's right.
So it does exist somewhere.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Uh,
Unconditional
I
love
that.
can be found
Yeah.
when you are completely in tune with who and what you are, because you are infinite love itself. There's, maybe at some point I'll do a talk on this. I think there's one on the website, but it talks about these 4 qualities. Let me see if I can remember them. It's been a while. To dwell within the spaciousness beyond mind as a being of infinite love, in harmony with the perfection of all things as they are, flowing as one with the effortless way of being. And that second part right there, as a being of infinite love, that's what we are. We are infinite love. The problem is this razor's edge conversation around, do I need to be loving versus I am love. Trying to be loving is a fool's errand. Love itself is a concept. If you're tied to the concept of what you think love is and you're busy trying to serve the concept, it's a fool's errand. Love itself, the true nature of love, when you experience the presence of being, when you really tune into it and you understand it, it isn't love like we see it. It isn't love like we think it is. There is a term within Buddhist philosophy called metta. Metta. And metta is more like a parental, compassionate love. And I've often said before, love is how one, no wait, compassion? Compassion is how one who sees and knows holds one who does not. And so, what that essentially means is, you're in tune with it all, you understand who and what you are, you understand what everyone else is too. And whether they see it or not, because you know that you and they are of the same essence, and that that essence is love itself. You are loving. You don't have to be loving. You are loving. And it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. Being loving is the person charging out into the world saying, look at me, look at how loving I am. I'm giving money to these people, I'm running this charitable organization, I've got this going on over here. That's all wonderful. That's all beautiful. That's all very noble within the illusory conceptual world. But you can be love and just be with your family. You don't need to do anything. You are infinite love. Just be love and don't worry about being loving. It's a very important distinction and something that carries a lot of weight within the experience. We'll talk about that at some other point too, probably. What else? We'll just take a couple more minutes. What else?
I wanted to ask, do you ever do any of this work in regards to like working with your children in concepts like this? Because it's, you know, like a lot of it seems to be, it's like, okay, like I've screwed you all up. Now you're old enough to understand that I did. Now I'm gonna give you some insight into
Right.
how I got unscrewed. You know, but by that time it's like they're already screwed up. Because they're already kind of like in this dualistic world and all that crap, you know, and all the labels and all that. So, I mean, it's like, how do you go about, like, and it has to do with love, because one of the things that I struggle the most is like, I understand, like, yeah, I love you the same way that I love my girlfriend, because I love. When it comes to my daughter, it's it's like, I get like, no, I love her more because she's my daughter.
Sure.
But then I understand that there is like, so now, my question is like, do I like her more because of certain things that she is to me? Or do I actually, are there levels to love?
You're responding to the conditional social responsibility of being a parent. It's the role that you're responding to. That's all. It's the role. It's the conditioned nature of the role. That's it.
So is the love the same?
The love for all beings, when it comes from the truth of being, is the same for all beings, regardless of what role they may be playing.
Right.
Because you see beyond the role. The role of child, the role of parent, the role of friend, the role of coworker, the role of gas station
Importance that
attendant.
we attach to the love, but the
Not
love,
from this place.
but the love is the same.
It is,
So it's our level of attachment that gives the intensity
That's
that
correct.
it gives it, but it's just
That's
not the
right.
pure love emanating from
that's right.
within.
It's identification with the role. It's
Right.
identification with the relationship. It's saying this particular relationship has more importance, when in reality, think of your child, she was God's before she was yours. She's just on loan.
So I can go to her and say, no, I don't love you that much. I love you the same way I love you.
Well, you can do that at your own peril.
I don't know what to do next week until I got that worked out.
Yeah.
No, but I
Right.
wanted to be able to
Yeah.
teach her a lot of those concepts that we're talking
Right.
about, but in a certain way, I am going to be like, I've raised her already to question everything,
Right.
even me. She has the ability to actually have a good mind. I don't want her, like, in a way, also, like, have her doubt her own self, because, like you said, school,
Mhm.
every society and everything, and then it's like, oh, here's this concept to question all of that.
Right.
So it's like, at what level do you, or how, that could be another one, another session, but I was
Yes.
just asking, it's like, do you ever do anything geared towards, teaching principles like this to your children?
All day, every day.
Okay, we gotta get
Seriously.
together.
Seriously, all day, every day. Because every single opportunity, every single time there is frustration. Again, we're dealing with twin 7-year-olds, right? So that's a handful. Twin 7-year-olds, that's a handful. And so every single time there is, I want and I'm not getting, I'm angry about it, this is an opportunity to practice patience. Every time there is, Mom, 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 it's, if you just wait for a few minutes, if you just are patient and you wait for a minute, show your mom how much you love her by allowing her to have 5 minutes of her own. We watched Princess Bride last week so I could teach them about as you wish. And was explaining to them, when you say as you wish and you allow it, when you mean it, when you operate in a way that's consistent with that idea, you are showing your mother how much you love her. And now one of them runs around and goes, as you wish, from time to time. It's slow. It's a slow process. It's just like anybody else, right? It's just each and every one of us, there's a thickness to the egoic consciousness we're carrying around, right? Theirs might be just this thick, but still, it's going to take time to work through it. Maybe, maybe not. Time isn't really a relevant factor. But what we see, again, with the understanding that every single being that is here is an expression of divine consciousness, that it's all coming from the same place, what we often see in our household is there's the child operating in the role of teacher that says, wah! And we have to work with our own experience and difficulty. And then there's the version of the child playing the role of, it really should all be love. When consciousness itself speaks through the lips of the child. Because children, with their thinner, exterior, egoic concept of self, are closer to the truth than we are when we've been hammered at by society for 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years. They're closer to the truth than we are. And so from time to time, they're more than happy to point out, oh, did you remember this? Don't forget about this. And they are wonderful teachers in both roles. As the one that demands we work within ourselves, and as the one who says, oh, by the way, I'm here to remind you. So yes, all day, every day. The message in this space is love and kindness. That's what we work with here. Love and kindness. Constantly reinforce love and kindness. Whether it gets through or not is irrelevant. The fact that that message hangs in the air is all that we can do. That's all that we can do. The rest of it is way out of our hands. Love and kindness. That's it. I don't know if Camille has anything she wants to add to that. And again, they can push buttons. They can push buttons. Children, that role of parent. There's no bigger role. There's no bigger role than the role of parent. And it's just a question of how identified we are with the role. So I don't know if that's helpful. There you go. When you're working with kids that are older and have a different conceptual level, then you end up in this situation where it's more like, you can only share information just like with anybody else. I've talked about this before, right? There was a period of time after my awakening, I wanted to run up and down the street and shake everybody by the shoulders and say, it's all so simple, it's all so easy, why can't you see it? And over time, I had to learn that all I can do is create spaciousness within my own being for other people to explore their own truths. And if you say to somebody, whether they're an adult or a child, hey, have you thought about this? And you're offering wisdom, and they say, not interested. Then you have to accept, not interested. You have to accept that, and you let them move in their direction. And maybe at some point they'll come back and they'll go, hey, I probably should have listened. Now I'm curious. And you honor the curiosity. And you just offer what you can when it's requested. This is true of everyone. You can't help anybody unless they ask for it. You cannot help anyone unless they want your help. And unless they ask for it, you're best off by just being quiet. You can watch them go off in a ditch and you can say, hey, if I were you, I'd turn right. If they want to continue going off in the ditch, you let them. But if you're strongly attached to the role of parent, strongly identified with the role of protector and guide, that's very difficult to do. But that's your work. Because again, the child is a movement within consciousness, just like you are. And it's we with our conditioned mind saying, that's a child. That's a person. In duality, within the experience of duality, yes, that's true. But we are only experiencing duality. The realm of duality is itself illusory and only has the weight that we give it. It's an experiential point of reference that's based on sense perception. If we can understand that we're so much more, we're so much less, and so much more at the very same time, and it's all just happening. It's all just happening. If the child goes into the ditch, that's their journey. And all the ripples that arise from them falling in the ditch are all ripples that are meant to occur within the field of awareness. Can we surrender to that? Or do we have to try to control it until we are broken of I want? I want this child to behave this way. I want them to do this thing. I'm going to use this method and this method and this method, and every method fails. At what point do you go, all right, it's no longer in my hands? Again, each and every one of us has to answer these kinds of questions for ourselves within our own experience of being, dependent upon our own unique circumstances. But these are the ways in which the whole thing is moving. It's like you're in a giant video game and you just need to know what the rules are. Love and kindness. Acceptance of things as they are. Letting go. That's kind of like the basic player's manual on one card. That's the quick start version.
But it's so hard. It sounds simple, but it's so hard.
It is. And that's why, there are many distractions on the road to enlightenment. And every single time we find ourselves caught in one of those points, every time we find ourselves wrapped up in one of those distractions, this too. This too. All right. One more, or if not, I'll create space for you.
I was gonna say, when we're talking about all of this stuff, there used to be little things that you could wind up, and then you put them down, and they just flop, 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 until they ran out of steam.
Right.
You know, and it's like, that's what we're doing, it's like we're going, and we don't hear anything, and we just completely exhaust ourselves. That we didn't even look anywhere or let anything else in, and
That's exactly it.
but when you were talking tonight, all I could think of was just flop, flop, flop.
Well, thank you, everybody. As I said, next week we'll be talking about loving what is. Loving what is. Thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you.
care and have a good one.